dici Italia e pensi
You say Italy and you think pasta. Yet, for a large portion of the peninsula, historically, the most important cereal has not been wheat, but rice. This plant has played a leading role in the nutrition of many generations of farmers and has become the main ingredient of some of the most significant dishes of our gastronomic culture and beyond. It is precisely in the rice fields that, for example, one of the most famous Italian popular songs and a universal anthem of resistance and freedom today first spread. Bella Ciao, according to some studies, even prior to becoming a partisan hymn, would have been one of the many songs sung by the rice harvesting women during the long days employed to uproot the weeds from the rice fields by hand. Today, Italy is the main rice producer in Europe with more than 1.5 million tons produced in 2020 and more than 216,000 hectares cultivated, which represent 51% of European land dedicated to growing rice. The history of Italian rice is troubled and not entirely clear. The most likely story, however, is that rice arrived in Europe from Asia around the year 1000. It was brought by the Arabs who first cultivated it in the Iberian Peninsula and in Sicily. At the time, it was not considered a food but rather a spice and was therefore an extremely rare, valuable, and expensive product. It would take about 3 centuries for rice to spread to the north of Italy and would only be with the outbreak of the plague that the nutritional power of this cereal was definitively recognized, and it finally became the foodstuff that we consider it today. However, it is another feature that allows rice to become the principal crop for some areas of northern Italy and for Lombardy and Piedmont in particular. Rice is, in fact, the only plant able to grow on flooded and reclaimed land which, at the time, were plentiful and fallow. The introduction of rice provided both wealth and nourishment. Lombardy and Piedmont are still the main rice growing regions. Following them is the Veneto, where rice found a home around the 15th century thanks to the contacts that the Venetian Republic enjoyed with the East. In Grumulo delle Abbadesse, a small town halfway between Vicenza and Padua, rice arrived around the 16th century. The nuns of the Benedictine Abbey of San Pietro di Vicenza introduced its cultivation. It was they who reclaimed the land and built the canals that allowed the water to be directed towards the rice fields. After them, there were several local nobles who, following the crisis in the silk trade, decided to invest in the cultivation of the hinterland, focusing in particular on this cereal that they had certainly encountered in their travels. The strong presence of these rich families and their large investment in local agriculture are well represented by the beautiful residences that dot this area, the so-called Palladian villas. These are country residences designed around the mid-16th century by the famous architect Andrea Palladio. Not simple houses, but architectural complexes which, in addition to the residence, boasted warehouses, stables, and all that was necessary for cultivation and agricultural production. Today, in Grumolo delle Abbadesse, rice is still being produced as it once was. We are referring to the Violone Nano, a variety created in 1937 by crossbreeding the Violone Nero, which has now disappeared, with the Nano. The Violone Nano grain is small to medium in size and rounded, very rich in starch, and therefore quite suitable for use in soups as a thickener. And if we talk about rice soup, it should be said that the most significant exemplar for this region is certainly risi e bisi. Prepared to celebrate the arrival of spring, risi e bisi involves cooking rice with peas, legumes traditionally grown in the Vicenza countryside. The origin of the dish is not certain, but it is traditionally connected with the feast of San Marco, patron saint of Venice, which takes place on April 25th. On that date, it seems, the first peas of the season were given as a gift to the Doge, and now it's up to us to try our hand at risi e bisi. The recipe for risi e bisi is very simple and starts with the main ingredients. We need peas, violone nano rice from the heart of the Abadese area, vegetable broth, a little bacon, and an onion, salt, pepper, parsley, and Parmesan cheese. The first thing we need to do is shell the peas, taking care to set aside the pods, which must be blanched for a few minutes in boiling salted water and then passed through a vegetable mill. Now you have to chop the onion and cut the bacon into thin cubes. Put the cubes in a pan with a couple of tablespoons of oil, brown them for a few minutes, and then add the rice. Mix for 3 to 4 minutes, then add the pea pod puree first, and after 5 minutes, the raw peas. Cook the rice as you would a classic risotto, gradually adding the broth. What we want is a relatively thick soup or a soft risotto all'onda, neither too soupy nor too dry. If you give the pot a sharp jolt, the surface of the risotto should form a sort of wave. Add the grated Parmesan cheese and chopped parsley, season with salt and pepper, and serve.